I don't really know what is coming. I don't know what side of it I'm going to be on. I feel like for the most part, I'm probably going to stick with my people, but I
Mhm.
also have two kids that I need to make sure are taken care of. Do
Mhm.
I detransition to conform to protect my kids, or do I go out with my community and refuse? I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the pressure is going to look like for my family. I honestly don't even know how you start to prepare for something like that.
In these days of evil presidents working for the crown.
I'm Colin Burrows, and this is the Wood-stein Media Podcast, Season 2, Episode 4. This podcast is produced on the lands of the Mississauga, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe, and Odawa peoples. On this episode, I chat with Stevie Bees about the boost that David Tennant gave their trans-positive t-shirt brand. You can see and order a shirt for yourself at steviessafespaces.com. That's STEVIESAFSPACES.com. The boost in popularity has enabled Stevie to infuse more positive energy into the gender diverse community we live in through activism, bursaries, and public speaking. We also speak about some of the more terrifying aspects of the rise of right-wing politicians and how to prepare if Canada follows the path America is currently on. And things get worse here in Canada for members of the trans community. This podcast and Wood-stein Media are independently produced journalism. You can support them through Patreon or by donating through PayPal at Wood-stein Media. That's WOOD-STEIN.ca. Thanks for your interest and support. If you enjoy this podcast, you can support it by listening to more episodes and liking, sharing, subscribing, or reviewing them. This is very helpful and appreciated.
For sure. Okay, so I'm Stevie Bees. I go by Stevie Bees online. My activism kind of started online on Facebook, where I made a graphic that said, "You can't erase us." And this was about 2 years ago. And then I made a corresponding graphic that said, "You will have to go through me." And the boss that I had at the time wanted the "You will have to go through me" on a t-shirt. Doing apparel is something that my husband and I do in our design business. So we decided to give it a go. We made the shirts. We did "You Can't Erase Us," "Go Through Me," and we also did "Protect Trans Kids." And then they got posted on social media, and a whole bunch of people wanted them. We had to cobble together a website really quick so that people could start buying them. And I think that was right before Pride 2023. And like over the summer, I think we sold something like 300 shirts or something, which, it doesn't seem like a lot, but that was all just locally in London. And then, yeah, we started kind of branching out a little bit. And I started sending shirts to celebrities and influencers online. Anyone on TikTok that had a public PO box, I would send them a t-shirt. And some of them would wear them and some of them were losses, and that's fine. But the ones that were wins would get us a slew more orders, and I would use that money to send them to more influencers and more celebrities. And then, you know, the famous David Tennant wore one.
Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
positive place to start because,
Yeah.
I mean,
So we sent one of each of our designs. This was Pride last year. We sent one of each of our designs, and we also included a bunch of fan mail from family and friends because we wanted it to have the best opportunity of being looked at. So we sent that all. We made it like all really personalized and everything. And yeah, I didn't hear anything more about it. It was about a month later, and I started getting a whole bunch of orders in my inbox. I didn't know where they were coming from. And someone sent me a picture, a screenshot of George's story where he was wearing the shirt over on Instagram on George's. I think it was also a post, but then also shared into her story.
mhm.
Um, And then she linked it, which was crazy.
And then it went through all kinds of media. It was everywhere for a
Yeah.
while. And that was,
It went through Pink News. It went through like I got calls from like CBC, and
mhm.
it did go in the free press. It went in Yahoo News. That was a big story. Yeah, and from there people would see it in the news articles, and then the news articles all linked it. So at that end of like the 3 weeks from like that whole viral moment where we broke the internet a little bit, we did $52,000 in sales just in
Wow.
t-shirts.
Okay.
um, I put $10,000 towards the Grayson Jones Memorial Scholarship.
Okay. Could you tell me a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So it's a scholarship that I founded the year previous, and it's one that I fund solely through t-shirt sales. We do kind of get donations here and there, but I make sure that it has enough to do the scholarship for the following year. So Grayson Jones is was a trans activist. I believe
Mm.
that he was in Halifax when he passed, but he did live in London. His family's here in London. And I knew his family through like small business channels. His sister was a friend of mine and an author, a children's book author here in London. So that's how I met Grayson. And Grayson passed away as a result of medical violence during his gender affirming hysterectomy. I don't want to
Mm.
speak too much on that without talking to the family first. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so I founded a scholarship in his name with his family's permission. His sister sits on the selection committee with a number of my board members from my not for profit called Fairy Godparents London.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so that scholarship is open in September and in January, and we give out a $1,000 bursary for each of those 2 semesters. And it's open for Ontario residents who are gender nonconforming and attending post-secondary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. You mentioned, was it fairy godparent?
Yep.
Do you want to explain a little more about
Yeah, for
what's
sure.
done there?
So Fairy Godparents started about 6 years ago, and it started as a toy drive. So we did a toy drive every Christmas, and then after a couple of years, I think it was during COVID, we founded the Period Equity Project. So we make menstrual supplies available to anybody who needs them.
Okay.
We're kind of on a bit of a hiatus right now, just because most of our volunteers are just kind of taking a breather before the big fight that's coming. So we're all on a bit of a hiatus from the Period Equity Project. We did do a toy drive this past year, but it was much smaller because, again, we're just kind of saving our resources and saving our energy. And then after the Period Equity Project, we founded the Grayson Jones Memorial Scholarship, and we just kind of like smushed it all into one. Right now, we're going after bigger funding just because most of the funding that comes in is from me and my t-shirts. So I would like some corporate sponsors to start helping out a little bit. And the goal eventually is just to be able to grant people mutual aid requests. So anybody who needs to pay their rent, anybody who needs to, make their car payment, or as opposed to losing their car, or food bank or anything like that. Kind of like what Have a Gay Day does, but like on a little bit smaller scale. So yeah, eventually we would like to just be able to grant people their mutual aid requests as part of Fairy Godparents London. It's very difficult to do this because we can't really, there's not really metrics on how to do something like that. So when we do our reporting at the end of the year and file our tax return, reporting to the CRA, they want to know what we spent our money on. So we're still kind of just figuring it out, finding our footing again because the bigger fight is coming. So we're just kind of finding our footing, figuring out where our resources are coming from and how we're going to continue to do this and keep it maintained, if that makes sense.
You're also doing public speaking too. Where do you do that?
Yep, anywhere I get booked. I have spoken both at King's and Fanshawe. I go in and do the social justice programs and stuff like that. So they book me. I also do Trans 101 presentations. So my Trans 101
Okay.
presentation is great for like corporate training.
Okay.
So it's just an introduction to trans people. It's a kind of like destigmatizing trans people. So it's great for people who have like no one in their lives who is trans and they can't ask questions and they can't like they don't know anything. They're not transphobic per se, but they're also ignorant.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault. It's just that they don't know any trans people to broaden their circles. So corporate entities bring me in to do a Trans 101 presentation. I've done it for CAS for foster parents. I've done it for the City of London. I've done community living, Youth Opportunities Unlimited. A couple times they've booked me, they bring me back. CAS plans to bring me back as well, and I'm really trying to get into the police department. I keep putting bugs in their ears, but yeah. And then I do it publicly every once in a while, either on Zoom or I'll book a space so that people can come and ask their questions here. Kind of, again, it's just to like talk about the ins and outs of like social, medical, legal transition and what it means to be a trans person. We talk about like some key glossary terms. We talk about like etiquette. We talk about how to be an ally or what happens if someone comes out to you, like how are you supposed to react? And yeah, so that's kind of what I do in public speaking, but also like I get booked for podcasts. I get booked for people will bring me in for like Trans Day of Remembrance or Trans Day of Visibility and they need a token trans person to do a talk or something. That's what I do. I'm not very good at public speaking. I'm not great at it, but I also know that like it's really important to
Hmm.
to make somebody like to do the thing. So I go in with like no expectations and you know let them all know right ahead of time that like hey, I'm autistic. I'm not great at public speaking. This is probably gonna be really weird, but it's also gonna be super authentic. So yeah, that's what I do.
That's really important. I think a lot of us who get out and do things now we're not always the slickest, most ready people. We're just doing it because we care about the issues, and that's so important not to let all the things that would normally have stopped us stop us, especially as you've hinted at. We're coming up on some big battles, I feel. And I'm not trans, but I have many people in my life that I care about and love who are. And so I think what you're doing there is really important. And I'm glad that you push through that and get out there regardless of what abilities people say you might or might not have. So
Absolutely.
thank you. That's
Absolutely.
what other activism are you currently involved with?
So just recently we put out our bus ad. So that it's just come down now. We put it out for 2 months.
Okay.
It cost $8,000 to do 12 buses for 2 months. And we fundraised it in 4 days back in December. So I put out like, you know, this was directly countering the transphobic bus ad that came out that was said, let kids be. And then it was put the brakes on medical transition for minors. So we can talk about how harmful it is, but I feel like most of your listeners probably already know that,
Hmm.
you know, kids are not medically transitioning. They can access puberty blockers and, you know, they can access hormone replacement therapy if it's considered life saving. But other than that, like kids are not accessing medical transition. They're only accessing social transition and sometimes legal transition with parental consent.
Hmm.
So it's just spreading misinformation and it's contributing to a culture of transphobia. So we decided that we were going to counter it. You know, there was talks about people doing protesting, there was talks of people talking at their board meetings and stuff like that, and I was like, they are not going to listen to that. They like the only way to play the game is to just like go do the same thing. So I was like, we can go and talk at their board meetings. In fact, I did. I went to their LTC board meetings to explain why Let Kids Be is misinformation and disinformation. But again, it fell on deaf ears. The None of the people at the board meeting even met my gaze. I was given 5 minutes to speak in a delegation, and nobody even looked up. So I know I made the right decision by going making my own bus ad. So I contacted the advertising company. They're called Lamar. And I reached out to them and I said, listen, like we don't really have a big budget. I do have a not-for-profit. So like I don't know if that can work into something. And they're like, yeah, we can give you 50% off if you have a not-for-profit. And I was like, cool. And like I said, it ended up coming to $8,000 for 12 buses for two
Wow.
months. But as soon as I put it out there on social media that this is what we were doing, people from all over the world supported it and funded it. So, like I said, we funded it in 4 days. And on January 1st, I signed the contract. So it went up on January 20th and it came down on March 16th. I regret nothing. I think it was amazing. It did what it was supposed to do. They asked if we wanted to extend the ad, and honestly, I would have loved to, but it was going to cost something like another $4,000 to extend it. And in these times, while visibility is important, visibility was what we did. $4,000 can do a lot more direct action than putting up another bus ad. So I regret nothing. I think we did exactly what we needed to do. Tons of people saw it. There were lots of good comments. Yeah, I think we did exactly what we needed to do, and that's gonna
Okay.
be something that will always be one of my proudest things is that we made a bus ad. That was crazy, but that's so cool.
I heard the buzz around that, and it was good to hear it. So it's another thing. I'm glad you're doing the things you do. I'm glad you did that, and it's another important thing you're doing. So
Thank you.
thank you again.
Really like to support direct action and mutual aid. So, um, these t-shirts have made such an impact on my ability to take care of myself and my family that I am able to fill mutual aid requests a lot more often. So I actually have a mutual aid post that goes up on Wednesdays on my social media where people can ask for anything that they want. They can post their GoFundMe. They can say like, listen, I haven't eaten since whenever,
Okay.
or I need to make my car payment, or my lights are going to be shut off. And most times I'm in a financially stable enough position to go through and support some of those people. And it wouldn't have happened without these t-shirts. I do want to put out a statistic so I know you're not supposed to talk about how much money you make, but I think that the numbers that these t-shirts do is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2024, the Go Through Me t-shirt, so the David Tennant t-shirt, the famous one,
Yep.
this t-shirt alone sold $150,000 in 2024.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's
And all of the shirts combined in 2024 did $230,000.
no, I think that's important to know and encouraging. So yeah, in that case, I don't think you have anything to be ashamed of talking about how much you've made. It's
I just,
it's
yeah, I think
because
it's important that people know that like there's enough people out there supporting this cause that
hmm
there is some hope here.
yeah, because I was kind of in the back of my head, I was sitting here wondering like how much can really be brought in by t-shirt sales, and I was also wondering, you had the big spike right after David wore it. Did that maintain or like well enough that you kept the income coming in? I was just wondering whether you got this big spike and then were able to do things then and you're kind of
It ebbs and flows. I can
okay.
definitely tell when people are hurting, and I can definitely tell when, like people just got their tax return, or um, I can tell when people's like government money comes in.
Yeah.
I love when people get their Ford bribe money because they always spend it on t-shirts. It's amazing. And then, I just put that back into the community as much as I can. So,
Okay.
um,
So Ford's bribe kind of ended up being a positive thing because it filtered through you to mutual aid for the community. So,
absolutely.
okay. That's awesome. You've kind of referred to it a couple times, and we're seeing drastic changes towards the trans community south of the border already. How are you preparing for what the future might bring that way in?
I honestly don't think you can.
Okay.
Um, it's unprecedented. There is nothing really that can prepare you for the atrocities that are coming. I really wish I didn't know very much about world history. I wish I didn't know as much about the Holocaust as I did because it's a direct mirror. It's scary because, you know, I have this conversation with my husband pretty often, where we chat about like what this is going to look like for us. And from his perspective, he always sees us as like the privileged people that are not going to be affected. And I am sitting here thinking, I'm not that privileged.
Yeah.
I am privileged, of course, but I am a big mouth in this community, and I paint a pretty bright target on myself. There's a lot of self-sacrifice that goes into being as visible as I am. I don't really know what is coming. I don't know what side of it I'm going to be on. I feel like for the most part, I'm probably going to stick with my people, but I
Hmm.
also have two kids that I need to make sure are taken care of. Do
Hmm.
I detransition to conform to protect my kids, or do I go out with my community and refuse? I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the pressure is going to look like for my family. I honestly don't even know how you start to prepare for something like that. We did do on my social media, we did do an inauguration countdown. So every day leading up to inauguration was one more action item that you could do. So there was like squirreling away cash, there was deleting any apps that can track you, especially like menstrual tracking apps and things like that, because that's going to be used against you if you get an abortion. AFAB people should be making sure that they're taking care of birth control and things like that. I know a lot of AFAB people, even married AFAB people, who are going to get their tubes tied because, like, if they're raped or anything, like, that's something outside of their control that they can't control. And then, you're in a position of needing an abortion, and who knows how long that's going to be available here. There is no
Yeah.
real way to prepare for this. It's just ride it out, honestly, and do your absolute best to speak up as much as possible. I
Yeah.
don't know what it's going to take for the rest of the world to put a stop to it.
I am kind of hoping for the best, but I don't like when, especially, okay, an example is I've been talking to a lot of my American friends, and some of them are still saying, like, well, in 4 years, we'll just vote them out or whatever. And it's feeling like, yeah, he tried in 2021 to not leave. What's going to stop that this time? Probably nothing, because they're not even listening to the courts. So I'm talking to them about that, and I want to have that hope, like that maybe it won't be as bad up here. Maybe PP won't get voted in, because I think that's, unless that 51st state stuff comes true, the worst case scenario is PP getting in.
And even if Carney does win,
Mhm.
we have to be prepared for the enormous amount of pushback that we're going to receive
Mhm.
from everywhere. You know, I did a speaking engagement right on the day of the inauguration, and they asked me then, like, are we going to see an uptick in transphobia? And even if Trump hadn't won, we would have seen that uptick because there would have been a massive rebellion. I think that the same can be said for Canada. Even if Carney wins, you're going to see the loudmouth group of people that are going to feel they're going to rebel.
I think Carney's good for the financial side of his background, but what I've noticed is the Party's not talking social politics right now. And
That's part of their strategy right now for winning over a few more conservatives.
yeah, and I mean, there's positives or negatives to that. Like, if they totally abandon that side of their platform, it could be almost all negative. But if they're just kind of keeping it down low, but it's still there to win over conservatives, I guess, well, that's something. I don't like to say, we'll just wait and see, because that to me sounds like people going, we'll just wait and see if the courts can keep Trump in line or something like that. And I think we have to be active in the meantime in whatever way we can. Uh,
100%. There is no rest.
yeah.
There is no. I'm just, it's the trolley problem, right? Like, do you go with Carney and maybe, sacrifice a little bit in terms of our community, or do you sacrifice everything and go with PP?
Well,
There is no right answer because both are morally wrong. But
well, I say for me that's not the choice
okay.
because I'm one of those never conservatives. So
Yes.
PP is not even a choice. And I can't understand why people would make that choice. In every way, it seems like voting against your best interest of almost everything. Everyone I know. I know very few people who would come out positive from a PP government. So much so that even I haven't said his real name in a long time. He's just PP. I don't want to leave this on that down note. I want to see if I can dig some other positive things out of you. And so, what what do you have lined up? Do you have any talk speaking engagements that are positive on the horizon or
I
anything?
do. I'm actually speaking this Friday for another community living organization. We've booked a spot at Innovation Works. But I can also leave you with I have a children's book that I'm
Oh,
working on. It's written, it's done. The illustrator's amazing. The new safe space design that we've put on our t-shirts comes from the illustrations from the book.
which design is that?
So we have a brand new safe space design. So we retired the old one, the one that David Tennant wears pretty often. It's also I'm a safe space, but we've just
Okay.
upgraded it to go with the new branding for when the book comes out. So I've been querying publishers for about 6 months. I've given myself a year. If I can't get a publisher to sign me in a year, then I will self-publish. The illustrations are amazing. I am very proud of this book. I wouldn't put it out there if I wasn't. The only reason I really want to go with a publisher and not self-publish is for the credibility. I really want to be backed by a publisher, especially in today's political climate. I don't want anybody to accuse me of anything. So I want to have the credibility of having a publisher behind me. I have heard back from a few of them. I have one yes, but it's a conditional yes. So we're waiting on a few things first. And yeah, I'm really excited about it because oh my God, your mug is amazing.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. That is positives to go out on after
Yeah.
a negative interlude. Yeah.
That's called What is a Safe Space? And it follows a whole bunch of characters that are actually modeled after people from my followers. And I can show you Ziggy.
Okay.
So Ziggy, if you've seen my safe space design, you know that there's an astronaut in the middle, right?
Yeah.
His name is Ziggy. So this is Ziggy. And Ziggy is one of the characters in my book. He's also on the cover. I don't know. I'm really excited about this book, and I don't want to give too much of it away, but I also want to let you know that like there is some cool stuff coming.
Okay. Did you say the name or can you say the name of the illustrator?
The illustrator, her name is Carrie. She lives in California.
Okay.
She's autistic and queer, and it's really important to me that I bring people along with me who are also part of marginalized communities. We're actually doing a small little ad right now, an animated ad of Ziggy. It'll probably go on TikTok, and it's how to be a safe space. So Ziggy is animated, and he's talking about how to be a safe space. But our animator is actually a 16-year-old trans kid in California. It's important to me that we use as many marginalized people as possible to bring the brand to life. like I want to work with someone who is comfortable working with a trans person, because a lot of people are turning me down right now because of who I am.
Okay.
And because of the way that, American politics are, they don't necessarily want to have someone on their roster who is trans right now. I am not being picky. I believe in the message of my book. I believe that what I'm doing is important. I'm willing to take some big risks, and I'm willing to look at partnerships that I wouldn't necessarily look at, because I believe that this message is important, and I believe that it needs to come out very soon.
Thanks again for talking to me. What you've been doing is amazing. I'm glad you got that David Tennant boost. That was amazing. I think that's the first time, and I didn't even realize you were from so close to me. Like I live out in the country north of London, but yeah, I that was what put you on the map for me. Just when I finally learned that you were so close, I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. That because I live in conservative country, a small town just north. I mean, the odds of us voting out those conservatives are like none. Right here, conservatives could run a rock in this riding, and the rock would win. It's like,
Oh, I mean, it's not, but
yeah, I know. But we're trying every time. Is there anything else before we get out of here that you want to promote? Do you want to just tell people where they can go buy those t-shirts? And
sure. So you can buy t-shirts at www.steviesafespaces.com.
okay, excellent. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Colin. Take care.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Spike the water with estrogen. Who cares now? There's plastic in the oxygen. Southern border wire fences. Let the migrants in. Big kids gonna lose their senses. The econ majors just minimum wage, and as they're struggling, they're trying to justify their own cage. When I get to hell, I will bully Ronald Reagan. As it trickles down, soon he's gonna be my maiden.
Thanks for listening, and thanks again to Stevie for the interview, and a big shout out to David Tennant, who may never hear this, but the money Stevie has been able to raise, just because David was cool enough to wear that shirt, has been directed into many positive initiatives, and that's great. I ended the show with the song Burn My Body by Voiduli. I believe that's how you pronounce that. Check the description for more information about how to find more music by them. Visit Wood-stein.ca, that's WOOD-STEIN.ca, You can support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Colin Burrows. Like, share, comment, follow, and support Wood-stein Media and this podcast, and have a wonderful day.